The following transmission contains unencrypted instances of explicit language. Mature audiences are cleared to proceed.
David, do you know what song won the Academy Award? What movie song won the Academy Award in 1956?
I do. That would be Que Sera Sera. That was also number 2 in the U.S. and number 1 in the UK. Yeah. Top billboards. They swept that year.
I hate that song.
Man, come on, I love that song. That's definitely a timeless classic.
Did you know that if you meet a stranger on a bus in Marrakesh, that you don't have to tell them everything about yourself?
I know it's a really bad idea to leave your kid in the care of some random couple you met the night before.
I am ready for another kidnapping, my man. I'm ready for a stabbing in a Mideast marketplace, and I'm ready for a 12-minute long concert scene with no dialogue whatsoever.
And a down-home awestruck performance from Jimmy Stewart that would have made the 1960s Psycho a much stranger movie.
David, are we here to talk about the 1956 version of The Man Who Knew Too Much?
Yes, we are.
Shall we begin? Let's begin.
With Paramount Pictures breathing down his neck about that movie he owes them, Alfred Hitchcock pitches a project he's been wanting to do for a long time. It's a remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much, which trades the claustrophobic black and white of the original 1934 version for wide open spaces and the saturated color of VistaVision. I'm Todd.
And I'm Dave, and we like to talk about spy movies.
In 1956, true modern spy movies have yet to materialize, but they are just around the corner. And films like this are laying the groundwork for the cinematic storytelling style that will define them. Let's tear apart the tradecraft of The Man Who Knew Too Much again in this episode of Spies Like Us. So again, we're here to talk about another what we're calling proto-spy movie, even though between the 34 version and the 56 version, there's 22 years have passed since then, but the genre doesn't really seem to have evolved at all.
No, it's pretty much the same story.
It is the same story, and also there's not a lot in between. There's nobody's doing really different stuff in that period, or at least if they are, it's been really hard for me to find them. I've only found even a handful of what you could call even a proto-spy movie, in between these movies, and even the ones that I can find, they're done in the 50s. So what I'm trying to say is that and this is kind of why we started with these two movies. I think that if you look at it anthropologically, the 1934 Man Who Knew Too Much, I'm calling that Australopithecus. That's a precursor. It's not really humankind yet, but it's kind of getting there. It's the first vision that you see of what it could be. Homo habilis being right on the edge of Homo sapiens, that's the 1956 version that we're going to talk about today. And the Homo sapiens of spy movies, the first Homo sapiens, I'm calling it, that's James Bond. That's in 1962, and it's right around the corner. So in a way, I think that Knew Too Much, the two versions, are very nearly serve as bookends of the proto-spy genre. With maybe you might want to push it out a little bit to get North by Northwest in there.
Well, yeah, that was around the same time, but it came after, right? And that probably was a little bit more close to what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's 59.
Yeah. But the difference between the 34 and the 56 is I think there was a lot more going on right on the cusp of the 34 version, because there was a real actual threat that was kind of hinted at in the 34 version with some underground Nazi movement versus in 1956. This is around the time of the Suez Crisis, but that was right at the corner, and it's not like Hitchcock knew it was coming. I mean, the reality of diplomatic assassination in another country, I mean, still today is proven to be a big deal and setting, a real reality. But I'm not really sure there's a whole lot going on historically, other than like in the trailer, Jimmy Stewart hints at Morocco being the troubled place, and there was a whole lot going on in the Middle East around that time. But I don't know if there's as much of a historical significance as the 34 version.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we talked about it in the 34 version, where the assassination plot that's described in that version, something very similar to that happened, like pretty soon after.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 months right after.
Right. And then with this one, I'm not trying to say like Alfred Hitchcock is like a super genius, but I wouldn't rule it out that maybe he knew more about like what was going on than he said publicly or anything. But
or somebody within his earshot knew something,
It might have just been in the air.
Yeah.
But like you said, like Jimmy Stewart did refer to this as the troubled region. So, and a really important event in the Cold War was just about to happen in Morocco. But this movie isn't dealing with that, even on a fictional level. It doesn't like you. If you say the 34 version maybe accidentally predicted something that was about to happen, this movie doesn't do that, but it is has a big scene set in a place that was about to boil over.
Yeah, and I think one of the big ties is we start Morocco and what in the 34 version, what are they in Switzerland?
Switzerland,
yeah. So those would kind of be the places to be. So I guess. But other than that, yeah, it's not a whole lot going on.
Yeah, and I read that Hitchcock placed this in Morocco just specifically because he had visited Morocco, like on an anniversary trip with his wife or something, and just said like, I want to redo The Man Who Knew Too Much and have it start here.
Yeah.
So, Alfred Hitchcock, he had a long career and like he actually had some ups and downs. And, in the 40s, he was kind of on one of his downs. But he comes back big time in the 50s. We got Strangers on a Train, Dial M for Murder. And let's see, what am I seeing here? By 1960, four of his most films that are ranked amongst the greatest of all time, not just of his movies, but just greatest of all time, are all done in this period. This is not one of them, right? But you got Rear Window, Vertigo, North by Northwest, and Psycho. That's so we're definitely talking about a very like fertile Hitchcock period. And that's not to say that Knew Too Much wasn't liked at the time. Like audiences loved it at the time. So I think we're ready to get into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's hit it. Oh, by the way, just one thing. You know who else didn't like Que Sera Sera?
Who?
Doris Day. She hated
No.
that song. She hated
Are you
that.
serious?
She
Well,
hated that song.
It's probably kind of how like Anna Kendrick hates the song Cups.
Right.
Or like how Abbott and Costello hates Who's on First. Everybody just loved it so much they made it.
No way. No way could they hate that.
Are you kidding? If you look up some of the video recordings, you could tell they've been doing it one too many times, and they're just
my God. I still think that's the funniest shit of all time.
It is.
I have
Absolutely.
that opinion.
Absolutely. But the thing is, I think everybody just wanted them to do it forever, and they couldn't do anything else because everybody just wanted them to do Who's on First. And so, like, I remember I looked up some like video recordings of them performing it way like after, like maybe a couple years after it came out, and they were like done. They were like pretty much just doing it because they had to.
I want to see
laughing because they already knew the jokes.
Right. I want to see that. All right, let's head to the briefing room.
Voice pattern recognized. Retinal scan complete. Validating security clearance. Clearance granted. You may now enter the briefing room.
It's 1956. A lot of the names in this movie are kind of parallels of the 1934 version. Bob is now Ben. Jill is now Joe. Ramon is going to become Ryan. Stuff like that. But in this movie, we start out in Morocco, another, far off, mysterious land, a little more mysterious than Switzerland. And Ben and Joe McKenna, that's Jimmy Stewart and Doris Day, are on their way into Morocco, and they're befriended by Louis Bernard. Louis Bernard's name doesn't change in this version. Louis is inviting them to dinner, and they're at the hotel having drinks before dinner when a mysterious, weird-looking motherfucker knocks at the door, apparently by mistake. And this is Ryan. He's our heavy. He's the parallel to Ramon in the first film. Apparently it's by mistake. It's not really clear, like, we'll dish into it when we get to the tradecraft part. It's not really clear at this point, especially to the audience, like what this chance encounter means. But we do note that Ryan and Louis Bernard appear to recognize each other. And after Ryan leaves, Louis thinks hard. He makes a phone call in French. I don't speak French. I don't know what he talks about. But then he cancels the dinner plans. So, okay. The McKennas head to dinner on their own, and while they're there, they meet up with another couple. I'm not sure. I guess the Draytons are supposed to be British? What do you think here?
I think they're British.
Okay. So they meet,
British, yeah.
right. But they meet another white couple in Morocco, and they all decide to have dinner together. The Draytons propose spending the day at the market with the McKennas the next day. And we're going to talk about why we think that is. Because, by the way, the Draytons, we're going to find out, these are the stand-in for Abbott. Instead of having a cool one guy mastermind behind the assassination plot. And by the way, in case I hadn't mentioned it, these movies do parallel each other quite a lot. But this is one point of divergence where Abbott, instead of being one creepy Hungarian Jewish guy, is instead replaced with a married couple, the Draytons, Mr. and Mrs.
Well, there is a mastermind. They're kind of the agents for the mastermind.
Louis also shows up at the same restaurant. The McKennas are kind of annoyed, like, hey, didn't he say he had some business to do? Now he's out having dinner and he shows up at the same restaurant. It's fucking rude, but it's not really important to the spy part of the movie. Or is it? Louis shows up with a French lady, and he's having dinner off in the corner. He notices that the Draytons and the McKennas are talking to each other. He appears to have figured something out. We're not sure exactly what. We're going to have to talk about that. We go to the next day at the market. The two couples are hanging out together with Hank, their son. I forgot to mention Hank. Hank is the parallel for Betty in the 1956 film. He's the child that's going to get abducted and be the leverage that the bad guys have over our good protagonist married couple, a boy instead of a girl. At the market, we see something interesting. This is where the movie really kind of starts getting going. We see the police chasing a robed man. We're not sure why. This scene gets a little confusing. We then, like, as the audience, we follow the chase, and at some point, a second robed man is involved in the chase as well. Between the police and the first robed man that they were pursuing. Or, I honestly can't tell. If the robed man they were pursuing is revealed to be also pursuing another robed man. It's really not clear to me, but one way or another, the robed man Okay, so like we got Roadman in the lead, Roadman following him, police following them. The Roadman in the middle stabs the first Roadman, and the police don't seem to care about that, and they keep chasing the Roadman who was the stabber.
Yeah.
We're gonna try and unpeel why that is
Right.
in a minute. But right now, let's just state that is a confusing scene. We're gonna try to unpack it, but before we do that, the stabbed man turns out to be Louis Bernard in disguise, in
Brown face.
brown face. Yeah, he's colored his skin to look like
Middle
Moroccan.
Eastern, Moroccan. Yeah.
It doesn't look good. It's not a great look.
No.
But maybe it would fool someone that was only halfway paying attention to you. He finds Ben, like he's walking into the market. He's like trying to get the knife out of his back. He can't. He's dying. He's staggering into the marketplace. He sees Ben, Jimmy Stewart, and before he dies, he manages to whisper this to Ben. I made a note that I had to listen to this shit like fucking 5 times to even hear what he was saying, which I thought was annoying. Now, maybe that's a problem, like, just because I watched the movie on YouTube. Maybe it wouldn't have been a problem if I'd seen it in the theater, if I'd bought the DVD or the VHS or the whatever. But I had to watch it 5 times to try and decipher, like, what he whispered. But basically, it was, someone's going to get assassinated, London, Ambrose Chapel. And I got to make a note here real quick that Ben hears it as a name, Ambrose Chapel.
Right. Yeah.
Later in the film, we'll find out that that's a misunderstood piece of information.
Right. All right. So at this point, we're in a marketplace, and this chase starts out with these police and this robed man. There was only one robed man in the beginning of the chase. Then out of, I don't know, the alleyway, a second robed man comes out to stab him. But I found well, first of all, this entire scene is insanely confusing. And I think Todd and I have sat together and tried to unpack this quite a few times. But one interesting thing that I want to kind of point out at the beginning is Hitchcock actually coined the idea of fridge logic. He kind of called it an icebox scene, where the idea is you're watching a show, you're not really paying attention, but then you go to the fridge or the icebox to pull out like a beer, like some chicken, and you're like, wait, how did the guy get to Africa from Australia in like half of a day? And the idea is that, like, well, in making a movie, there's bigger fish to fry. So I think this scene might have been an icebox scene to Hitchcock, where he's just kind of like, we're just going to set up a chase, a guy dies and passes on this information. However, at much more scrutiny or much more focused, analysis of what happened, not only in the marketplace scene, but at the previous night at the restaurant, we can kind of piece together that the Draytons must have, which we already know they were watching them, because at the hotel, I think it was Joe that realizes that they're kind of watching them. They just kind of used.
She got a hint. Her nose started twitching.
Yeah, she got a little twitch of the nose.
Which they covered up. Which they covered up. And let's all remember, like, the Draytons are the bad guys. We just, as the audience, we don't know that yet.
Yeah, we don't know.
We
don't know that yet.
Yeah, so we're going backwards to analyze like what we saw happening. But the Draytons cleverly disguised that over, or kind of cover that up. But we haven't mentioned that yet, that Joe is a famous singer. She's a very famous person, and so they just pretend to be fans.
Yeah, and they happen to just sit right behind the McKennas at this Moroccan restaurant. And they did notice that they were talking to Louis Bernard, and that might have been the information they got from Ryan when Ryan accidentally knocks on that door. So the Draytons are definitely watching the McKennas, and have probably pieced together something with Louis Bernard, especially since Louis Bernard walks right into the restaurant and you see the McKennas have a little bit of a domestic dispute over how insulted they are that they got blown off by Louis Bernard, who promised them to go to dinner, and he kind of canceled on them for this young lady. And there's kind of like a cute little domestic kind of back and forth between the McKennas. But what I think is actually going on here is the Draytons are trying to get as much information about the McKennas, since they probably have figured out that Louis Bernard.
Let me stop you here, because I think we want to lay the table out just a little bit more solid for this, just in case we're jumping ahead a little. Just like in the first movie, the Draytons we think, are here to hire Ryan to be the assassin, just in the same way that Abbott went to Switzerland to hire Ramon.
Right. Exactly.
Ryan. Let's see. Well, I think that's all I needed to make sure that we had in place. So
yeah, this is what the Draytons are actually there to do, is to recruit Ryan to be their would-be assassin.
Right. And we're gonna figure out later too that Louis. So and again, Louis Bernard, same as in Switzerland in 1934, he's the counter spy that's here to gather intelligence about this supposed assassination plot. So he's there to monitor them, and he apparently was looking for a white couple coming into Marrakesh the same day, and that's how he accidentally thought the McKennas were the Draytons.
Right. Which we find out later, because Jimmy Stewart spells it out for the audience as he's explaining it to his wife. But
and that's a really good piece of tradecraft here. I think it's one of my favorites, even though I kind of had to watch it twice to get it. Is there's that initial scene on the bus, right, where there's a little accident. Hank gets into a little bit of trouble, and Louis Bernard intercedes to kind of smooth out the situation because he speaks Moroccan, or whatever language they speak in Morocco. No offense, Morocco. I don't know your culture.
Yeah.
But it just seems perfectly innocent. I watched that scene. I had no issues with it. It's later, after they depart, after Louis Bernard and the McKennas part ways, that Joe turns to Ben and says, what are you doing? You're telling him everything about us. And Jimmy Stewart, Ben, he's just like, what are you talking about? We're just having a chat. And she's like, didn't you notice how much...
Oh, this is the bus scene, yeah. When they first meet on the bus on the way to Morocco.
Right, but it's after they've gotten off the bus and have split up, after having made dinner plans. Joe is just, she's got her nose is twitching. Her nose is totally twitching. And Jimmy Stewart doesn't see it, but she spells it out to him and says, you told him everything about us, and we don't know anything about him. And then I went back and I watched the scene on the bus again, and I was totally floored. And I really enjoyed this. And it felt like a really good piece of tradecraft. When you watch that scene, Louis Bernard actually does, in a perfectly casual seeming conversation, he gives up no information about himself
whatsoever
and gathers a ton of information about the McKennas, and that is some good spy stuff. Plus 15 spy points to Louis Bernard.
Yeah, absolutely. He used a basic technique of just kind of playing to. Is it Ben in this movie?
Yeah.
Ben McKenna is, I guess, kind of, people like to talk about themselves, so he kind of compliments him every so often to get him talking more and more about stuff, and Ben haplessly, just this, oblivious American tourist on a bus with someone he just met, just gave out a ton of information about himself.
Yeah, he's really. Yeah, where they've been, where they were recently, what Ben's background is, et cetera, et cetera. Later, when they're having drinks in their hotel room before dinner, it becomes a little bit more explicit. We have Louis Bernard and Joe out on the balcony having their first drink, And she, at this point, at this point you notice it. You don't need to go and rewatch it to catch this. At this point, you can tell Joe is trying to turn the tables on him. She says
so what do you do? Yeah. And he keeps diverting from it, and he's trying to talk about her being a celebrity. Oh, I didn't know you were a celebrity. And she's like, well, you're from France, right? And he's like, well, I was born there. And he's like, how have you not seen me perform? I've been on bills everywhere. I've done tons of shows. He plays like ignorant that he doesn't know who this celebrity is, and she continues to switch the tables on him and go, well, what do you do? And his response is like, oh, I buy and sell. And then she's like, what? He's like, whatever is the most profitable.
Oh yeah. He's extremely vague.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. You had something to say where you thought there was something. Okay, so actually, here I want to talk about. So now we know who all the players are, and actually, let me, in case it needs to be said, further set the table in that this still parallels the 1934 film, where, well, there's a slight difference, but in the first film, Gibson and Louis Bernard worked together at the London Foreign Office. In this one, London knows about an assassination plot, and Buchanan is our substitute for Gibson. He's the good spy master guy that
Right.
is going to lay it out for our protagonists. He will later in the film, he's going to tell them that they requested that Louis Bernard go to Morocco to investigate the assassination plot. So Dave, go ahead and tell us, why wouldn't London just send their own guy? Why would they send why would they ask France
Well,
to send one of their agents to Morocco?
Well, like we discussed in the briefing, Morocco is pretty much, not French occupied, but more like France is pulling the strings, and they have a lot of business interests.
It might depend on who you ask. I mean, the day-to-day Moroccan in 56 might think of themselves as France occupied, not necessarily by the military, but just,
politically and economically, everybody there is kind of a puppet for France. And so it wouldn't be strange for a Frenchman to be in Morocco.
The head cop in Morocco is a Frenchman. He's not a Moroccan.
No.
He's a frog.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, so the French are in positions of power and authority in Morocco. And also, just French people are going in and out all the time, so they got their passport situation and everything, and so maybe it's just it's just you as the British intelligence, you say you know what? We don't know shit about Morocco. Should we send our own guy? And someone in the room is probably like, maybe France can help with this. Let's see what they know.
Yeah.
And so since we're all friends, it being post-World War II and all, the French send their guy in.
I think we should get back to the restaurant because I don't think we got through to the marketplace.
That is exactly where I wanted to go. Take us there.
Yeah. So in the restaurant scene, I think we were talking about how the Draytons had obviously been, watching the McKennas probably because of the situation with Ryan. Louis Bernard walks in. They piece together that they've been dealing with Louis Bernard, and they probably figure out that's the guy that they got to find, probably from information they got from Ryan, who apparently accidentally walks or knocks on their door. And they see the animosity between the McKennas, and the Draytons then, I think it was Mrs. Drayton, invites the McKennas out to the market. And I think, and that's when Joe said we were supposed to go to the market with Louis Bernard.
That's
so
true.
They just gave up another piece of information to this couple that they've never met, and that has just been playing on Joe's I guess, ego about being a celebrity, kind of like, oh my God, we love you, we're huge fans, and blah, blah, blah. So they accept the invitation. What I really wanted to point out here, though, next day at the market, is we don't see Mr. Drayton until halfway through the market scene. What we see is
So he could be off doing shady, evil spy business.
right, and at the restaurant, they probably pieced together that Louis Bernard is the guy they got to watch out for. He probably tips off the police about Louis Bernard, which is what causes the chase. I mean, like, we're really, really drawing conclusions here because we don't get any information about the chase whatsoever. But my guess is because we don't see Mr. McKenna, he's probably talking to one of his agents or has a cutout somewhere. I mean, like, it's obvious they speak Moroccan or understand the language. So they probably have a lot of contacts in Morocco, especially on the street. And so my guess is Mr. McKenna probably hires our assassin who ends up stabbing Louis Bernard and might have also tipped off the police. I don't know why they would be chasing him, but I just think it's odd. We don't see Mr. Drayton at the beginning. We see the McKennas watching.
Right. I got you.
We got Mrs. Drayton and Hank watching the storyteller, but we don't get Mr. Drayton until halfway through. Also, during the sewing machine shot, you see Mr. Drayton talking to somebody.
Hold on. Sewing machine shot?
Yeah, this is just before the chase starts. And there's all these sewing machines.
Oh,
and Hank is all
correct.
excited.
Oh, wait a second. Parallel. Remember, there's Louis Bernard right before he gets killed in 34. He's entangled in a web.
Right.
Of string?
That Jill was knitting for him.
Right. So
yeah.
So because it's Hitchcock and Hitchcock doesn't do shit by accident.
Right.
Immediately before Louis Bernard gets killed in 56, we're also introduced to a bunch of cloth making, like sewing.
Correct.
They're not sewing, they're weaving.
No, they have sewing machines.
Okay, they're sewing.
They're those paddled ones. And there's like, I don't know, probably like 20.
All right, never mind that. I thought I had something. But there's still thread involved, right?
Yes, there's fabric and thread and sewing. Like, it's the knitting in 34 and it's the sewing. And Hank is like completely blown away with all these sewing machines and he's super excited. But one of the cool things is what I noticed, and it's really hard to see this, is it's just Mrs. Drayton and Hank watching the sewing machines, and you see Mr. Drayton in the background, very hard to see, talk to someone in the marketplace.
I did not catch that.
Yeah. And then...
Ooh.
So we had a missing Mr. Drayton. Mr. Drayton shows up, and he's walking around by himself, and then he kind of meets up with everybody, and then he's talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden there's a chase.
It's got to be connected to the chase. He's telling someone. He's telling someone they're passing information, and he's like saying like somehow like go ahead, pull the trigger, spring the trap. Louis Bernard's got to die.
Right, and that's probably how they found out. He probably was missing, maybe trying to recruit Ryan. And that's how Louis Bernard got the information, because it was pretty obvious that he had just received this information and had to get out of Dodge. So,
all right.
My guess is
I want to take this from the top, and you help me out, right?
Right.
The problem with the Morocco sequence, which is 50 minutes, compared to only a flat 15 in Switzerland. I mean, in Switzerland, I think Louis Bernard is dead within 5 minutes of the credits rolling.
Yeah.
Like, it moves at a savage clip. And, we had to do some guesswork to put what was going on there together. The Morocco sequence gives us so much more information, but it's kind of like more of a messy sweater where like there's more threads to pull on that maybe don't make sense. But let's try to take it from the top and like walk through and just put together our best guess of how everything was going on. The Draytons are headed to Morocco to hire an assassin.
Right.
Louis Bernard is sent to find out about that. He mistakes the McKennas for the Draytons.
Right.
He later is recognized by Ryan mutually,
Right.
which I'm going to go ahead and say I can't think of any good reason for that. I mean, there's only so much I'm going to try to like write the plot behind the shit. I think like the easiest, the Occam's razor reason that they recognize each other is because Ryan is an internationally famous assassin and Louis Bernard is an internationally famous spy. And they just know each other from knowing each other. Unless there's a whole bunch of weird shit that happened that we're not privy to. So I'll just simplify it by going with that. Ryan tips off his new employers, the Draytons, that Louis Bernard is in town.
Right.
Louis Bernard realizes that it's the Draytons he should be paying attention to. So now everyone, at least on the bad guy side, everyone knows everyone.
Right.
McKennas still don't know shit.
Nope. Yep.
They're in the middle of it. Now, the Draytons decide now, so Ryan saw Louis Bernard with the McKennas, so along with alerting the Draytons that Louis Bernard is in town, he also mentions, like, they were also hanging out with this American couple. The Draytons say, well, who is this American couple? Maybe they're agents.
Right.
Or at least, let's find out.
Right.
So let's, like, make friends with them and pretend to be buddies. And they do that by inviting them to the market so they can spend time together.
Right.
I'm all good so far, right?
Right. But that's when we have a missing Mr. Drayton. That's probably when he's discussing the information about the assassination.
Right. So what's Louis do? Like, it's confusing to me what Louis is doing. Louis
dressed as a Moroccan.
He's apparently made some decision that he needs to. I mean, he's in disguise. Why? Two possibilities. He needed to be in disguise to go and gather some critical piece of information he didn't have yet.
Right.
Or he goes out and gets either that night after dinner or that morning before the market, he's still doing his spy stuff and he's gotten the last piece of information that he needs. Because remember, if he knew all the stuff, like, he wouldn't have been playing this whole game with everyone.
Right.
Like, from the start. So apparently at some point between dinner and him getting stabbed, he's been off doing some cool spy stuff, which if this was a real spy movie, the audience would have been following that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
How did you describe these movies?
Wait, let me land it. Or he's suddenly gotten into disguise because he knows he's been busted and he knows he needs to get out of Morocco now, and he's making a run for it. And somehow this is precipitated. I don't think we need to dig in too much harder, but I love the fact you noticed that Mr. Drayton made a call, like not a phone call, but like made a decision and like put something into action.
Right.
Immediately before the police chase. And I don't know. That feels like as tight as we can get it for now. Unless you got something to add.
I just love how much we had to draw from little information. I think it was you that described this movie as a great spy story that gets interrupted by a movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem in Switzerland, it's the opposite problem between the 34 and the 56. In Switzerland, we get so little information, but we can connect the dots. In Morocco, we almost get like too much information, which a lot of it just doesn't make sense, and so it's a lot harder to like draw the dots. And especially, I'll come back to it later, I still can't figure out why Ryan knocked on the door of the McKenna's hotel room. And there's only so hard that I'm gonna think about that. I've literally been thinking about it for the last 2 weeks
He said he
of
was looking for
preparing
the
for this podcast.
Mullins. So I think it's the same situation that Louis Bernard found himself. Louis Bernard was looking for a white couple in Morocco, and Ryan was probably looking for a white couple in Morocco. So he probably saw that that's the room they were staying at and realized that he was like, I'm looking for the Mulhollands. He was like, not the Mulhollands, we're the McKennas. So he probably realized he got the wrong couple, just like Louis Bernard realized he got the wrong couple. And that's why he made that phone call. That's about the best I can do.
That is absolutely the best theory that I mean, like I said, I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
that is the best we can come up with. I'm going with that.
Okay.
There's also, we're gonna find out later in the film, there's a ganky, wanky, like plot reason for him to have knocked down the door, which is basically so that we can make sure that Joe has seen him, because that's going to become important later. But it's just
I don't know about important.
No, it is. It is, because if she didn't, she'll know more about the assassination when she shows up later at the concert. Yeah. She's going to see him in the lobby.
Yeah.
And so, as opposed to the lady in the 1934 version who goes to the concert knowing nothing, Joe is also going to go to the concert knowing nothing. But when she arrives at the concert, she's going to see a person that she's seen before. She's seen him in Morocco. He's going to say something creepy about her kid. She's going to realize this is a bad dude.
Right, exactly. But I think that's about the best we could get out of this one. Yeah, because we don't get a whole lot of information about that.
Okay, so, dude, there's some other shit that happens in Morocco and some other tradecraft that follows before. Now, in 1934, we switch right to London at this point, pretty much, right?
Right.
But the Morocco scene keeps going, and there's some interesting stuff going on here, right?
Yeah, they after the murder, they noticed that the victim whispers something to Ben McKenna, and so the police asked Ben McKenna to come in and make a statement. To which,
while still in Morocco,
to which I think Mrs. Drayton, who we find out the Draytons are villains, suggests that she should take Hank back to the hotel because they wouldn't want she's sure the McKennas wouldn't want their son involved in this police business. And we'll find out later.
So without knowing anything about what's been whispered, the Draytons are stepping in and saying, like, let's grab leverage against these people just in case. The French cop that's in charge of Moroccan stabbings is only talking to Ben.
The man of the couple in this situation.
Right.
In 1956 fashion.
Now, Mr. Drayton, though, okay, so Mrs. Drayton, super crafty. She's maybe taking control of the Hank situation just in case they need leverage. Right. She's probably not kidnapping him right away, right? Because that would be like jumping the gun. Mr. Drayton, super crafty Mr. Drayton. This is another one of my favorite bits of like spy stuff in this movie. He says, like, he wants to be a friend to Hank and come with him to the interrogation. He does two things
here.
Friend
with Ben, not Hank.
I'm sorry. Friend with Ben. Thank you.
You're welcome.
He does two things here. In the lobby, before they're going into the interrogation, he's just like, hey, look, man, you don't know this guy. Why, like, just say you didn't know him.
Yeah.
Like, it's
going to make things complicated.
It's going to be complicated. We're white people. They're French people. Yeah. They're brown people all around us. We should be on the same team. And I'm just looking out for you. Just go ahead and say you didn't know anything, which is great, and that might have worked.
Right.
The other super cool thing he does, when the cop opens the door and says, like, Ben, you got to come in here. Mr.
He offers to translate.
Yes. Go ahead. Take that one.
Because basically Ben doesn't know French. Mr. Drayton knows French and apparently Moroccan. So the head police guy who's in charge of stabbings, who's investigating this matter and questioning, comes out, and Mr. Drayton offers to translate, which was a fantastic like tradecrafty idea because he could control the situation. He could
Absolutely.
mistranslate, miscommunicate, and control the situation and prevent Ben from saying anything. However,
Ben could tell the cop everything
right,
in English, and Drayton could just mistranslate it,
right,
and neither the cop nor Ben would be any the wiser.
and their plan would still go on, and they wouldn't have to hold on to Hank anymore. However, Mr. Drayton's plan is foiled when the police officer starts speaking very fluent English and says, "No translation will be necessary. I'll talk to you later." So now we have the McKennas and this officer in a room, and I think he starts out by accusing them of being spies because he now alerts the McKennas that Louis Bernard was an agent of the Dijammu Bureau, which I think we described in the briefing.
We did, yes.
Yeah, and Ben McKenna not having an idea who they are, what that bureau is, because of course, but the officer is not buying it, and he keeps like pushing him. So we have this interesting interrogation scene, and we have a very angry Jimmy Stewart in typical American film fashion, standing up for his family and for the right thing and all that other stuff.
Jimmy Stewart's great. Jimmy Stewart is so good at like getting, I don't know, uppity.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? Like when Jimmy Stewart's upset, like he's just got a certain flavor of being upset. I really love Jimmy Stewart as an actor. He's got probably like 10 switches that throws.
Yeah.
But like it is this is pre-Brando, this is pre-method acting. I do think Jimmy Stewart though is very worthwhile mentioning as one of the greatest pre-method acting actors of all fucking time.
Yeah.
He definitely
very endearing
in his shit.
Yeah, he's very endearing. He's a very warm kind of person. Now everybody loves him.
He can be clumsy. He can be vaguely anxious. He can be angry.
Yeah.
But in all of his 10 switches of all his 10 emotions that he places, like he does each one like just so pitch perfectly well.
Right. So in the middle of an interrogation, a phone call comes in for Mr. McKenna.
Very similar to 1934.
And he answers the phone, and this is when we find out that Hank is in trouble, and he's being threatened not to tell the police anything about what he knows, or something bad will happen to his son. We then have Mr. Drayton try and contact his wife, which we found out was fake, and he can't get through to his wife, and they can't get through to anybody, and now their son is missing. And I think that's about all we really need to discuss about the interrogation scene.
Yeah, we go back to the hotel with Ben and Joe, and Ben tells Joe everything while taking his sweet time about it. And this is actually a really nice scene, which I know that you liked a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to set the table.
Oh, wait, but before that scene, Ben goes to talk to the valet, I guess, and asks about the Draytons, and he finds out the Draytons have been checked out.
Oh, right. So now is when this is the first time the audience knows that or strongly suspects that the Draytons are not good people.
Right. That the Draytons have probably kidnapped their son.
Yep.
And that there is a problem because they have this piece of information, and now they're being threatened not to give this piece of information.
Right, and he hasn't told Joe anything at this point. And in their hotel room, I think we're ready for this, right?
Right, we're ready.
Hotel room, he spends some Jimmy Stewart time thinking about it and putting all these pieces together, and he wants to get it all straight in his head before he lays it out for Joe. And
very
it's a great
gently
scene.
lays it out for her. Yeah.
I want to lay the table, and then I want you to take it home, right? Because we both love the scene.
Yeah.
He takes his time. He's thinking. He's putting the pieces together. And once he's arrived at this full conclusion, he's figured out that Louis Bernard was looking for the Draytons, not the McKennas. Right. He's figured out that Louis Bernard was a spy. He knows that Hank's been abducted. He suspects the Draytons did it. So a lot of bad stuff has happened. Joe doesn't know anything, and he wants to tell her, he needs to tell her, husband to wife, this is what's going on, honey. And he's a doctor, by the way, in this movie. Mm-hmm. He gets his little doctor kit out, and she's freaked out, but he wants her to take a pill before he lays out what's going on.
Right.
And then he does so, and I want you to describe the scene for us, okay? Go, buddy.
Well, watching this movie, you watch a lot of old movies, and you get a lot of mechanical acting. That's kind of like, here's the lines, and it's obvious we're watching actors act. And so I really wasn't paying attention to a lot of the acting in either of these films, other than just Amazeballs, Peter Lorre. But what happens is when Jimmy Stewart kind of gently starts, setting the scene for Joe, and when everything's out on the table, Joe falls apart, completely falls apart. And
it's a beautiful scene.
Yeah, beautiful scene. This is the moment when I actually started watching her acting, because the whole movie was a very typical 50s movies, just dialogue is thrown back and forth between actors. But this moment,
it's very quippy.
Yeah, very quippy. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to describe it.
But this is where we start like seeing some real pathos, some real emotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some cracks in the armor.
Yeah, and she falls apart, and it's not like over the place. It's not like she does go all out, but I don't mean all out in a melodramatic way. I mean she goes all out like a mother who has literally just lost her boy and has realized that her boy is not safe. And it made me, I started feeling that moment with her. She made me believe that this was a mother that lost her baby boy. Her poor little baby boy that she loves so much, and she's a mother, and her boy is missing, and she falls to pieces. And this is the moment that I actually started watching her acting throughout the rest of the movie. And let me tell you, Doris Day was
right. And it's not just that she gets so angry and frustrated that her husband didn't clue her in like every step of the way,
Right,
like
exactly. She has a range of like an amalgam of all these emotions going on at
once. while he's trying to hug her, she's like beating at his arms and just saying like, you fucking bastard, like, why? How could you even suspect that our son was like taken away from us and not immediately fucking tell me?
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I just super brownie points for Doris Day's acting. She definitely was ahead of her time. Yeah,
I love her. She's adorable. I'm gonna go ahead and say like the name Doris Day is a name that I've known my entire life.
Yeah,
and I've always known like that's a name like my parents would like throw around, or I would see in whatever like film papers about whatever, and say like, oh yeah, supposedly she was famous. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I've never seen the bitch, don't care about her. But after watching this movie a few times for this, I actually might go ahead and seek out some other Doris Day films, because not only is she a hottie, but she can fucking act
and sing, and she's just.
I don't know about the singing.
Oh no, I thought her singing was great. I mean, like the end scene, I think she purposely was just trying to be loud so her boy could hear. Well, anyway, we'll get there. We'll get to that. But you heard her sing earlier in the movie, which we actually didn't bring up, but we should talk about that song because it's important later. Yeah.
Right. No, actually, why don't you go ahead and mention that now, because we should mention that before we leave Marrakesh, because that is indeed something that's going to come back to be important. while they were in their hotel room.
Hank is singing a song, and Joe starts singing the chorus, and this is when you can hear that she can sing, and I think there was like a joke from well, whatever. Yeah, like the boy can't sing that well, but we hear Joe singing beautifully. But there's this song, Que Sera Sera, which was released in this film, and I think was the top song of that year.
Yes, it was the number one. It was the number one song in 1956 due to this film.
Yeah, and so it's really important that we talk about this song, and because it'd be important later.
And it all makes sense because she is a famous singer. Singing is her craft, and she's just having a delightful little moment with her boy, where
and her
she
boy starts whistling the tune, which will also be important later.
Right, where she is sharing her love of music with her son.
Right, and she's a little mommy, baby boy moment. Yeah. So let's. I guess that's good for Marrakesh. Let's head to.
I got 2 tickets. Let's get on board.
Yeah, to paradise.
No, to London. Let's go to London.
All right.
Yo, kid, it's London.
We are in jolly old London.
We also came to London in the 1934 version. The difference here is that the McKennas are Americans, so they're not on their home ground.
Yeah, and they have to set up a place to stay with their friends.
Yes, because Joe's famous. She's got rich friends. It's no problem.
She gets off the plane and she's welcomed by a horde of fans. But at some point, as they get off the plane, they're taken away by an official and brought into a room, and that's when we meet Buchanan for the first time.
Buchanan is our Gibson analog from the first film. He's our friendly master spy.
Right. And, there wasn't too much crazy. I mean, we got a similar parallel. Buchanan is like, hey, we're the good guys. We do this. This is our job. There's a spy issue. We know that your son's been kidnapped. We know that there's an assassination, or there's a plot, there's a piece of information you have, and we need that information. And he tries to convince the McKennas to give him the information and let them take control so they can protect their boy, to which, no, we're going to take care of our boy and we can't help you. And I don't think we have a lot to go through on that scene. We can just kind of skip through.
I got some hits here.
Yeah, you do? All right. Well,
sure. Well, the Draytons are also clearly monitoring the Lawrence's movements because they send Coke bottle glasses lady.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some more surveillance.
Right.
They're not just going to be happy just like warning the McKennas not to say anything. They're also going to watch the McKennas, see what they do, see who they talk to.
Right.
Buchanan in this movie is introduces himself as being a member of the special branch of Scotland Yard, which we talked about in the briefing.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he tells them the London knew about an assassination plot and asked France to help. We covered that in Morocco, didn't we? That's fine. So, remember the dentist scene? So Ben is gonna go do his own investigation.
We're gonna phone call to Scotland Yard.
Oh, of course. So this is again like a parallel to the 1934 scene where the villains are still, or at least when the villains notice, in both cases, when the villains notice that the master spy, the friendly master spy, is making contact with our friendly protagonists. Mm-hmm. The villains decide, hey, this might be a good time to remind them of what's at stake. And they place a phone call.
To Scotland Yard.
Right.
As if it wouldn't be traced.
That one also gets traced. I forget exactly how that one gets traced. They
traced it to a public phone.
Okay.
think that really led to anything.
So again, a public phone, right? Didn't go anywhere. Yeah. So remember we had the barber scene in 1934.
Right.
Ben goes off to, or Bob went off to investigate the barber with Clive. In this case, Ben goes off alone to follow up on this name. He thinks it's a name. We're going to find out it's not actually a name. Ambrose Chappelle.
Which is a taxidermist, right?
Turns out to be a taxidermist. Some shenanigans ensue. There's
biggest waste of the whole movie. 20 minutes for a dead end that really served no purpose.
It's pretty garbage, and I do want to skip merrily along, except to mention that, like, I mean, boo, minus, I don't know, minus 10. No, not 10. 10 sounds harsh. Minus 5 director points for Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
For doing that stupid thing where, like, Ben's walking along the street and he hears footsteps behind him and he stops. And the footsteps behind him stop. And then he keeps walking. And it's all a bunch of bullshit. Like,
that leads nowhere.
Total red herring.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to make us think this is a spy, this is an intrigue moment, but it just turns out it's a total case of mistaken identity. And opposed to the barber scene, or Barbour scene, sorry, I kept thinking, like, when I first saw the movie, the 34 version, I thought the barber was a barber. It's not a barber, it's Barbour, which is the name of the dentist.
Right.
In this case, Ambrose Chappelle is a taxidermist that has nothing to do with anything. It's total dead end. Whereas in the 34 version, the dentist was something that led to something.
Right. And then I think we have a scene where Joe realizes that it's not Chappelle, that it's Chapel, and we're looking for a church. And we get contact, right?
In weird ways, whatever. She gets that information to Ben. Ben and Joe meet at the chapel.
Yes. And now we can get back to the movie after wasting about 20 minutes of screen time.
Hallelujah. That is definitely one place where if you're scoring the movies side by side, this part of the movie is definitely a thumbs down, and the 34 version is a thumbs up.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to the chapel, and at the chapel, there's a church service going on, and so Joe and Ben start standing in the back, and we discover Mr. Drayton is the pastor, and Mrs. Drayton is like, one of the church helpers, and she thinks she collects the offering. Like in the 34, we had like a weird sun cult or something like that. In this, we actually have a church. Probably it looked still pretty culty.
So we know we're in the right place.
Yeah, we're definitely in the right place. Yeah, that's right. We've noticed Mr. Drayton, and so they finally made their contact, find the right place. But this is where we get espionage 101. Is this moment with Jimmy Stewart and Joe before they actually reveal to the Draytons of their presence.
They're standing in the back. There's a sermon going on.
And Jimmy Stewart, being as tall as everybody remembers, is towering over all these people. And Joe, being the clairvoyant that she's been this entire film, realizes that this is a problem and signals Ben to go stand behind these pipes that are like as tall as the ceiling, that so he could be hidden. So I just wanted to make a point here that we have this is our first moment that the McKennas pull off a little bit of train.
Oh, I see. That's dude. You've been talking to me about the pipes for like the last week, and I now I get it. Get it.
Like just this is like such a like. Yeah, I think it was great that they put this in here, because here's Joe and he's a towering Jimmy Stewart, and he's going to be noticed right away.
He's a tall man.
Yeah, he's a tall man. But as we find out, it doesn't really matter, because as Mrs. Drayton is taking the offering, she walks towards the back, and we get a face-to-face reunited Mrs. Drayton and Joe McKenna, who Doris Day now delivers the greatest daggers of all time. She stares at her with the biggest animosity. I've never seen daggers like this in a film ever.
Get away from, give me back my son, /
Yeah,
get away from her, you bitch.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So why they needed to hide, I'm not sure, because they ended up showing themselves anyway. But like it's pretty much paralleled at this point.
No chair. Sadly, no chair fight.
No chair fight. None whatsoever.
No, Joe. Ben gets Joe to leave the church. Right. As again, like in 1934, like once the villains realize that the good guys have infiltrated their hideout,
right?
They kind of make a show of getting everyone that shouldn't be involved out, ushering them out. Mm-hmm. And in this version, Joe, like Ben says, like, Joe, you should go out with them, and so we're left just alone with Ben and the villains. And actually, I don't think there's no heavies involved here, like there was before. There's just the Draytons just the Draytons and Ben, and we find out
knock him out.
They knock him out. He does find out. He does confirm that they have Hank. That wasn't necessary, but he gets knocked out.
Rush out with a bunch of other people that are involved and take Hank to an embassy
of some kind. We're not exactly sure why they're going to an embassy at the moment, but in retrospect, we're going to find out as the audience that this is the embassy of whatever nation the assassination target is.
Right.
And in the first film, we were able to deduce that the assassination target was a French high official. In this movie, it's a very fictional, not laid out for us what nation the assassination target is a high official of.
Right. We're not sure, he might be a prime minister, I think. Wasn't he a prime minister? The target.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. In this case, they're a little bit more specific about the rank.
But we have no idea what country.
So, yeah. In 1934 version, it's whatever high official of France. And in 56, it's the prime minister of whatever country.
Well, now might be a good time to talk about why an assassination is even planned to begin with. Because we didn't really discuss that in the 34 one or the 50. And now's, I think, a good time. Why are they trying to kill these, public officials in either of these films? We don't really get a whole lot of information about that.
That's true.
In 34, we do get a parallel mention of the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and why it's a big deal that we have to foil this plot of an assassination. But we're not really sure what's this assassination going to accomplish.
It is strongly suggested that the stakes are possibly that high. But not exactly why.
Right. So in 34, we're past World War I. In 56, we're past World War II. And there's actually been other assassinations. In fact, one is in the huge list of events that people believe started World War II. One of them was the assassination. I think it was in July of 1934, which was just months before the 1934 version released. And people believe that might have been one of the events that sparked or led to World War II. So this is a pretty big deal. But what is the purpose of these assassinations? What are they trying to gain out of this? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, in both cases, it strikes me that the assassination is planned to go off not in the home country of the assassination target, but while they are a visiting dignitary to another allied nation. And so the idea, I would think, for instance, in 1934, you got an important French guy visiting London, gets shot in London. I'm thinking Nazis. I'm thinking Nazis. I'm thinking that they're trying to put a wedge,
Between England and France, maybe?
in a better movie, in a more modern movie. It could have been more explicitly laid out. But of course, that's the problem with, historical movies where, you can't, like, the people making the movie can't know what is actually going on behind the scenes in the shadowy world of espionage. Usually we don't find out what was really going on until many years later. Then we can make a film about it.
Right.
But I think it's good to look at, like, what was going on at the time and put it side by side with the film. In 34, that same year, an actual assassination plot did happen.
Yeah. And it was successful.
Yeah, I know, like, we got different results from our research on, like, which happened first, the movie coming out or the assassination, but I don't want to dive too deep into that right now. But the idea, I'm sorry, bringing it back, the idea here in 34 would be to Nazis. They never specify Nazis, by the way. That is just us.
We know they're probably German. Is this because the group isn't really identified? It's just a group with an assassination plot, but we're pretty sure they're German.
All we know,
in the 34 version.
All we know is that someone wanted a French high official to be assassinated while in London.
Right.
And that's what we know from the film. What we know from history is that the Nazis wanted to assassinate, I think it's an Austrian guy, while he was in a different country. So, I mean, the pieces fit together.
Yeah.
I'm not saying conspiracy. I'm just saying, like, the table is laid. It makes sense. In 56, it's a little less clear to me.
Because we don't know what country it is, but we're presuming it's probably a Well, no, because later we find out that the ambassador to country X, we'll call it, is got the plan to assassinate the prime minister of country X. So he's probably trying to get himself elected as prime minister, would be my guess.
Sure.
Because
we are gonna find out that the ambassador,
right.
who's traveling with the prime minister of country X,
right,
is the person that hired the Draytons to go to Morocco to hire Ryan,
right,
to make sure that their head of state was assassinated while visiting London. I think that's important. I think.
Well, then that way the ambassador could come back in the public and be like, "Oh, England wasn't able to protect our prime minister. We should have a problem with this.
Dude,
and elect me as prime minister."
No, fuck not able to protect. I would be going back as the villainous ambassador and saying, dude, motherfuckers, London,
is our enemy.
The English just shot our fucking prime minister.
Right.
Let's go to war.
Elect me prime minister. I'll take us to war and I'll get our revenge.
I will take care of this situation.
Yes. That's all right. So we probably have a clearer idea of the motivation behind the assassination in 56 than we do in 34. That makes that. No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, both of them make equal amount of sense, just in different ways.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So at this point, the Draytons have retreated to the embassy.
Right.
And Ben's knocked out. So I guess we can move to the concert.
I got another thing though.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Blonde Butler.
Blonde Butler.
When the Draytons, like, okay, after the kerfuffle at the church, the Draytons escape out of the back of the church with Hank. They've got a couple heavies with them.
Yeah.
Just some thugs, and they've got their little kidnapped boy. And they go to the embassy and they make sure that the kitchen staff, like, they don't want anyone to see them come into the embassy, which I think is going to be a recurring theme in this podcast about how embassies and ambassadors and diplomats often get intertwined with the spy world.
Very much so.
Yes.
This is actually very, very common.
It
That,
keeps keeps happening over and over. Now, they give the order to clear out the kitchen staff so that they can sneak Hank in and themselves in to the embassy without being seen by anyone. Then there's this weird shot where one person and you don't know he's a butler. Actually, I don't know he's a butler. I'm assuming he's a butler. I'm calling.
Well, we kind of figure that from later on that he probably is.
I think so. Yeah.
I think he's a butler too. But at this point,
we zoom in on his face.
Yeah.
And he looks off to the side, and he kind of looks through a vent, which I thought was an interesting thing. And there's one of the kitchen staff says like, "Oh, I wish we were working at the Swiss embassy, where it's like normal, but like here everything's all fucking like secret bullshit." And that's the moment like we zoom in on him, and he just has this look like he hasn't seen anything,
but he's figured something out.
He's taking note of the fact that that they've been cleared out.
Right.
He knows something's going on. Why does he know something going on? We're gonna save him for a little bit later, right?
Yeah, we will, because we have a lot to say about this blonde butler who really we're not told a whole lot about.
He only has 2 moments in the movie. But when I was going back and trying to figure out some of my key questions, we're just mentioning this. We're putting a pin on the blonde butler because he answers some of those questions.
Yep. Yes, he does.
David?
Yeah?
Have you got a concert ticket sticking out of your pocket?
I do have a concert ticket sticking out of my pocket.
Does it say A. Albert Hall?
No.
What?
Is the fifth? No, that's 34.
No, they're both at Albert Hall.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, then mine does say Albert Hall.
Okay.
All right, sorry.
Now we have the concert scene, the 56 version. Again, it's parallel to the 1934 version. It's quite a bit more extended. It's quite a bit more lavish and beautiful. It's not really important to the spying part of the movie, so I don't know. We'll just make some quick notes on that, and we'll move along. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I mean, nothing really spy-y happens. This is just the climax of the film, and like you said, it would probably much more lavish. But we did talk about Ryan and Joe's interaction at the hotel, and
that was in Marrakesh, right?
Yeah, Marrakesh, right? And now Joe shows up to the concert, and she notices Ryan, and Ryan notices her, and minus like 500 spy points for Ryan.
Right.
Yeah, walking up to her and being like, "You have a lovely boy," and then running away because he literally just gave away that he's probably the assassin or involved. And by the way, Joe, you found the right place. By the way, we all have your boy. So minus a million spy points there.
I'm worried about spy point inflation here.
Yeah.
Can we call it a solid 50?
Yeah. We'll do a minus 50. Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah. No. Probably like worst decision ever, but probably for just cinematic reasons.
Joe goes to the concert because she's looking for Buchanan, because Buchanan said that he would help them.
Yeah, and that he would be there, right? And then she notices the prime minister and the diplomat, and I think this is when she pieces together that the prime minister is the target.
Yeah, in this one, I think she does. She does.
So from there, nothing really happens other than Country X has a flag that was probably drawn by a little kid at paint time after school.
It definitely tries to look. It tries too hard to look like a country's flag.
Right.
It's quarter. It's got 4 sections diagonally. There's way too many colors. And absolutely, just in case, apologies to this country if we find out. But if we get even one angry email from the person of Country X that like, no, you fuckers, that is my country.
Yeah.
That is my flag. And fuck
Yeah.
you. I'm
Yeah.
unsubscribing.
Yeah.
Even if we get that one angry email, I will consider this podcast a success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we looked into it, and I'm pretty sure it's a fictional country.
It doesn't look like a real flag.
No, not at all. But yeah, I think that's all we need for the the concert scene. There's a lot of cinematic stuff we could discuss because it's much more lavish, but I think we can move on. The assassination occurs, and just like in the 34 parallel, Joe screams before the cymbal crash, saving the target's life because he freaks out and gets out of the way, and he just kind of gets grazed by the bullet.
In this version, Jimmy Stewart is no longer captive. Like the Jimmy Stewart character is no longer captive, and he gets to wrestle with Ryan, and Ryan falls to his death, which is different than the 34 version. So we don't have our Ryan/Ramon heavy to worry about anymore for the rest of the movie. From now on, it's just the McKennas versus the Draytons.
Right, and we end up. I guess we could touch on this going to the embassy because that's where the Draytons have retreated. There's a little bit of political issues because the British can't do anything because an embassy is technically foreign land, and so they had to find a way to figure out that Hank was there so that they could actually do something. And how they do that is because we have a famous singer who just saved a man's life, who was indebted to her, and he had invited her.
I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that back a step. Do you mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. After the aborted assassination, the McKennas. Actually, we cut to as the audience finding out that the ambassador is behind it all because he meets.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
He meets with the Draytons at the embassy, and he's pissed that the assassination didn't go as planned.
Right.
This is the second place we see Mr. Blonde Butler.
That's right. I'm so sorry that we skipped over this.
He's the one that ushers the Draytons in and then closes the door behind him.
Ambassador's office, right.
Yep. Right. So now when we come back to our heroes, we have the McKennas meeting with Buchanan right after the assassination. Right. And just like you said, they're sharing as much information as they can, but a phone call comes in for Buchanan, and we don't get to hear what the phone call says, but after he hangs up, he says, the Draytons are at the embassy. Now, this one is really what put me onto the Blonde Butler when I had to rewatch it and try to figure out. Because, okay, let's say there wasn't a Blonde Butler, real quick. Here would be my thinking. Why does Buchanan, who calls Buchanan to tell him the Draytons are at the embassy? Why is anyone watching the Draytons? Why is this the right time for someone to call Buchanan and say, oh, by the way, the Draytons are at the embassy? The Draytons weren't being watched. We know that because, they just weren't. Otherwise the good spies would have known about the church. All this shit would have been over. Even if it's now that the Draytons become people of interest, you can't go back in time to surveil the Draytons and pay attention to where their whereabouts are. Right?
Right.
So, who...
Oh, and this is also when Buchanan figures out the prime minister, he says, they're trying to assassinate their own people. I wish they would do it in their own country. Yeah, that was also that same scene. So, how does Buchanan have all this information?
Which again ties back to our thing of, we think that the whole plot in both cases, it was critical to the villain's plot that the assassination happened in a country other than their own.
Right.
And that it caused an international kerfuffle.
Right.
So I was confused by that, and then I've taken days thinking about a lot of this shit and going back and forth through the movies, and then I was like, oh my fuck, it's that Blonde Butler. It's that blonde fucking butler. He's the guy whose nose started twitching when the kitchen staff was cleared out.
Right.
He's the one that ushered the Draytons in to see the ambassador.
Right.
And those are the only times we see him.
Right.
But we shortly afterwards we get a phone call to Buchanan revealing the key part of information that we need, that the Draytons are at the embassy. It's got to be BB. It's got to be my boy.
Yep. That's a great catch.
He's got to be the man. He's got to be the man on the inside.
Yep, absolutely. That was a great catch.
I'm giving myself 10 spy points.
Yeah, I think you deserve them.
That up.
I think you deserve them.
All right, cool.
Yeah. All right, so we're at the embassy, right? And
We're at the finale. Do you want to do this or shall I?
I can do it because there's really nothing left, spy-wise, other than
there's
another time that the McKennas. This is the second time.
Let's just wrap this fucker up because from here on out,
it gets bad.
It's kind of bad.
Yeah, but this is the second time we get some.
The best part of the movie. The best part of the movie is definitely behind us at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is another time that we get to see the McKennas pull some tradecraft. The Prime Minister has survived because of Joe's scream. Prime Minister's completely indebted to her,
and he knows it. He thanks her.
And the British can't do anything about the embassy because it's foreign land. So Joe, or I think Ben, comes up with the idea to have her call the Prime Minister to tell him that he wants to meet him tonight. That way, ensuring the two of them will get inside the embassy. So we now got a way in for the McKennas. You know what I mean? So this was kind of a little tradecrafty. We didn't get a crazy amount from the McKennas, but this is another moment where we get to see our heroes actually pull off some spy stuff.
So I'm thinking the reasoning for this is Buchanan. Okay, we know the Draytons have your kid, or we strongly suspect.
Right.
The Draytons have your kid.
Right.
We know that the Draytons are at the embassy.
Right.
Neither of those pieces of information, he doesn't spell this out, but I'm going to spell it out. Neither of those pieces of information are enough for us to go to war.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But if we had positive proof that one of our citizens, or actually one of your
American citizens,
because it's an American, but London and America are allies, and country X is, who the fuck knows? Who the fuck knows why we give a shit about these people, or why we invite them to our concerts?
Yeah, exactly.
Just go shoot yourself. Go shoot your leaders in your own country, please.
Right.
But if you could positively prove that an American citizen is being held hostage in country X's embassy, then we might be able to do something. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so now we get, the McKennas getting into the embassy, and we have British police surrounding the embassy on the outside because that's the limit to where they have jurisdiction, I guess is what you would call it. And so the idea is to have Joe sing that song that we discussed about earlier at the hotel, because she knows that her baby boy would recognize that song, and because she's a international celebrity
and recognizes his mother's voice,
and recognizes her mother's voice, but she'd be able to sing in front of all these people because she's an international celebrity, and here's an opportunity for them all to see this famous singer. And then we get to see a really, really not amazing version of the song sang because she's trying to sing it as loud as she possibly can to her baby boy. And we get some interesting reactions from the audience in the embassy. But
a lot of critics, and if I were to count myself amongst them, found the Que Sera Sera scene to be grating and annoying.
Yeah.
She sings it very loud,
Right.
and for what seems to me to be an interminably long period of time. It's not
Right.
exciting.
Yeah.
But Hank does hear. I mean, the
he
plot
whistles.
point is accomplished. He hears his mother's voice. He starts. Oh, Mrs. Drayton, who's having doubts because
Right.
the ambassador told
have
Mrs. Drayton to eliminate the boy, and Mrs.
Yeah.
Drayton is only going to go so far with this shit. She's not into child murder.
Right.
She encourages Hank to whistle, and I don't know why that works, but it does. Jimmy Stewart hears his boy whistling. He heads upstairs. He finds his boy. What happens next?
What happens next is probably the single worst ending to this story. Well, the second worst ending of this story, followed by the worst ending to this story. We have Mr. Drayton show up with a gun to try and hold Jimmy hostage. They go through a back and forth kind of negotiation where Jimmy's like, "You're not going to pull the trigger because everybody hears the gun," and there's tons of diplomats and security, so you're going to get out. Mr. Drayton convinces him that Jimmy Stewart's going to help him get out of the embassy, and on the way down the stairs,
he's gonna walk out of the embassy holding Hank and Ben hostage. Mostly by like keeping his gun pointed at
until
Hank's
he can get out of the embassy and get away with all of this. But what happens is Ben McKinnon trips Mr. Drayton on the stairs on the way down
at a key moment.
And Mr. Drayton shoots himself on the way down the stairs, and everything's tied up in a nice, neat little bow, which is then followed by the worst ending of all time.
Oh, I see what you mean by the second worst ending and the first worst ending.
Yes.
So the second worst. I mean, this is the worst ending I've ever seen in a movie, ever. Period. Like ever. There's no competition. No. This is. Remember, I talked about like I didn't want to inflate spy points too much.
Right, yeah.
I'm not trying to give Alfred Hitchcock minus 100 director points for this movie because there's a lot of good things about this movie. But if I was just looking at this ending,
yeah,
I don't think it's unfair to give him minus 500 director points.
Yeah, it's
bad. And so what you mean, like the first part of the bad ending is that the villain
is tripped and then shoots
himself. That is so unsatisfactory.
Yeah, and then we're like, all right, well, I guess that's settled.
What is the thing? There's a word for it. I've had some beers, and that's why I can't always remember what words are. There's a word that you're supposed to feel as an audience when the thing happens. It's closure.
Oh yeah. No,
or something.
We got no closure whatsoever.
Some kind of relief of like the tension that's been building up. And the tension, trip, oh shit, villain shot himself. Fuck you, Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Only to be followed by the worst ending ever.
It's just, there's a cartoon. I don't know if our audience has ever seen it. It only ran for a certain while on Cartoon Network. It was called Cow and Chicken. It was very like Warner Brothers-y, like it tried to be, it was just slapstick. It was called Cow and Chicken. One thing I really liked about that show that I thought was really clever is they never tried to wrap things up. They would just like do their shit, do their slapstick, and then just Chicken would just say, and
yeah.
And that's how this next part feels.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us what happens?
I want you to.
You want me to? Okay. Well, after our villain has just shot himself being tripped by Jimmy Stewart falling down the stairs.
And let's remember, because we didn't mention, because it wasn't important, that Ben and Joe were at a dinner party with
that's right. With the friends that because she needed a place to stay, so she called some of her rich British friends to kind of put them up.
Themselves, at various points as information came in, like, oh, I gotta go do a thing. I gotta go talk to a guy, blah, blah, blah. As the audience, we have completely forgotten about these people until now.
And there's a whole group of friends, probably like 6 or 7 friends that have been excited to see Joe and Ben, and they're just drinking, and then Ben and Joe have to leave. And so this party, these group of friends were just left there, and then we go on with the rest of the movie all the way until the end. Our villain trips and falls and shoots himself. We have a very, very quick reuniting with Hank, and then we skip to a shot of Joe, Ben, and Hank returning to the place where their friends have just been hanging out waiting for them and are falling asleep from eating and drinking, I guess, just mind-numbingly waiting for them to return. And we have a joke from Jimmy Stewart that's like, hey, sorry we're gone so long. We just had to go pick up Hank. And then
And roll credits. The music smells. We roll credits. Yeah. Fuck you, Alfred Hitchcock. I have to give you so many minus director points.
I wonder if this was like a budget thing, or if like Jimmy Stewart was like, hey, it'd be really funny.
Dude,
it was the most Jimmy Stewart joke.
It absolutely. Oh, okay. No, you go first.
Oh no, it's that joke is such a Jimmy Stewart joke. I'm wondering if he was just like, hey, it'd be funny, and then Alfred, who loved working with Jimmy Stewart, was like, okay, whatever. But I think it's probably more of a budget issue.
It feels to me like they just remember we did our Ed Wood show on the Yammering Lou thing, and like how they just suddenly like ran out of money and the people showed up and said like you can't film here anymore. It's that bad. It just feels like it's awful. It feels like the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes of the film was just like hastily done. Like we just got to wrap this up. We spent
all our budget on that concert scene.
We spent way too much.
And that Morocco marketplace,
right? Which we hadn't mentioned was filmed in location.
Yeah, we didn't talk about
Marrakesh. Like that marketplace is the main marketplace of Marrakesh, and apparently, like it's a really famous place. It's like the Times Square. Well, I don't want to say this because I don't know Africa. I'm not pretending to really know Africa, but it's the Times Square of North Africa.
Right.
It's a really famous place, and it was probably really expensive. I'm not sure how many movies were being filmed on location in foreign lands. I feel like I see so many old movies that are like, clear, like, okay, yeah, you're saying that you're in the Gobi Desert, but clearly this is Southern California.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
But it just felt like maybe someone was like, look, Al, like you just got carried away with the Morocco stuff. Like we're out of money.
That concert, and we're out of money.
Yeah, the concert is also like very lavish, very colorful, very good scene. It's got a 12-minute sequence without any dialogue, which I think was different for the time, and I think that was considered to be like a very like ballsy auteur move.
Yeah.
By Alfred Hitchcock. I think that's one of the reasons like that scene. It's not that exciting in the 34 version, but if I'm comparing scene by scene, I gotta give points. I gotta give a lot of good director points for the concert scene. But yeah, it just feels like they ran out of money.
Yeah.
Let's debrief. Yeah. Let's debrief. Yeah. All right, let's head there.
All right.
The 56 version is got, okay, how do I say this? It's very colorful.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I only watched this on YouTube, so I can't rate I mean, sometimes like a lot of films, it's important to watch them in their original form, the way they were meant to be seen on a theater screen. In this case, like I feel like if I had seen this in the theater, I would be just overwhelmed by the fucking stark colors. I don't like it. I don't like this is like a new technique. It's also apparently like VistaVision. It was a new technique that Paramount or something was using, that they were showing things in widescreen. Not that they were inventing widescreen, but VistaVision was a different way of like showing things. This movie's too fucking colorful. It's annoyingly colorful. As far as, and I don't think it fits the theme as well. Like I would much rather be in the dark, claustrophobic, like little shots of the 34 version. Um, there's way too much quippiness.
Yeah.
There's way too many jokes that I don't know what the sense of humor was in 1956, but a lot of the shit you're doing, it ain't funny in 2019.
No, it's not.
and it just feels like a waste of my time. I liked the acting a lot. I'm gonna short it and give it. I'm gonna go with 2. I'm gonna go with 2. I do not need to see this movie again ever.
Okay.
I didn't mind seeing it. I felt like it was an enjoyable watching experience, even watching it a couple times in preparation for this podcast. But I never need to see this movie again. I've seen it once and done. I mean, I've seen it twice now.
I actually enjoyed watching this movie as a movie more than the 34 version myself. Kind of, my dad's favorite actor is Jimmy Stewart. So I've had a lot of, fun moments just growing up with Jimmy Stewart. So just watching Jimmy Stewart be Jimmy Stewart again, and then discovering Doris Day is like a phenomenal actress. But I think overall as a story, other than that grotesque ending, yeah, like I really enjoyed the ride. You know what I mean? Once we started dissecting it and we discover all of the kind of mess that was left for us to kind of piece together, that kind of bugged me. But I definitely enjoyed watching it more than the 34 version. But like as you were saying, it's not funny. And that 20-minute scene that we wasted with the taxidermist, like if that scene was taken out and we had a little bit better ending, I think I would have rated it better. But I think I could rewatch this, especially that scene on the bus with Louis Bernard, basically gaining information from Ben McKenna. I could probably rewatch that 1,000 times. But for the most part, I think I would enjoy rewatching it, but I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to rewatch it. So I'm probably going to give this a 2.5 stars. Even though I enjoyed it a little bit more, artistically, there wasn't anything interesting other than like some Hitchcock camera angles. A couple interesting ones that really give you some feeling. But I think a lot of the visual, I guess, art form in the 34 one was much more rich, even though I think this was a more cohesive story that I could follow rather than being really choppy, other than that ending. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with 2.5 stars on this one.
All right. I like it. Now, this is a podcast about spy movies and the tradecraft that we see within it. So we got to give these movies another rating. Right?
Yeah.
We got to give it we're going to call it a redaction rating. Now, the redaction rating, I hope I don't have to explain this. I'll find a tight way to explain this in each episode. A redaction rating works the opposite as a star rating. Here's how it works. Let's say that the events of this movie actually happened, and then someone made a movie about it. Just, can you follow me with that thought experiment for a moment?
Yeah, I'm there with you, yeah.
Okay. So if the movie reflects the real events, then it is not redacted.
Okay. Oh, I see.
It has a low redaction rating.
All right.
If the movie has no basis in reality, then we assume that the movie, whatever real events it was based on, had to be so heavily redacted so that we as the audience wouldn't actually know what really happened.
Right. Okay.
So it works the opposite with stars.
All right.
Kind of. I mean, you could have a 5-star movie with a 5 redaction rating. That's fine. That means it's a great movie that doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
But possibly the best score that you and me, Dave, could give a movie, if we ever do, would be a 5-star movie with only a 1 redaction rating.
Right.
That would be a movie that is super awesome and is also super accurate.
Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah.
All right.
Well, what do you think about this movie?
Let's prep on that. Let's go through our top 3 best tradecraft moments from these movies.
Oh, and then we're giving the redaction.
Yep. And then we're gonna get our top 3 worst. I'm gonna start. My number 3 for best tradecraft out of these 2 movies, I'll go with the 1956 Louis Bernard chatting up the McKennas on the bus. I thought it just felt so authentic. I didn't catch it when I would first watch the movie. Then when Joe got suspicious and I went back and paid close attention to how Louis Bernard massages that conversation, he felt like a real spy to me. That's my number 3. Best.
And then is it me?
That's you. What's your number 3?
My number 3 was when Mr. Lawrence in the 1934, when we get to the creepy cult church scene, he asks one of the hench ladies, so is my girl ready to go? And she replies, well, yeah, she's right here. She's ready to go. I know this is super cheesy and it probably would never work in real life, but instead of going to Abbott, who's the mastermind, he goes to like one of just these random hench ladies and in British fashion, kind of cleverly tries to go, oh, is my daughter ready to go? He basically gains the information that his daughter is in fact at that church. And I thought that was kind of fun because it was done in a very cheeky British way. And instead of him going to Abbott asking that question, he just goes to the random lady and gets the information, who's probably not as up to speed as Abbott would be.
Nice catch. I didn't catch that one. My number 2. This one I'm also giving it to 1956. That cheeky fucking move where Mr. Drayton tries to be the interpreter.
Yeah.
For Ben McKenna for the French police.
That was great.
That was ballsy. That was ballsy and super tradecrafty. I gotta give him spy points for that. I'm not sure how many. Let's say 15. Let's say 15. 20. How about 20?
20, yeah, 20 spy points.
25. 25. Yeah. I'm feeling generous. 25.
Yeah.
What's your number 2?
My number 2 is the 1956 Louis Bernard on the bus, like your number 3. Yeah. I just thought that was it was so accurate, the way that a person would try and extract information from an oblivious traveler or just talking to anybody and not giving any information. Just play to their ego, compliment them here and there to get them to keep talking, encourage them, be excited while you're listening to them. So I think that's going to be my number 2.
There's so many fantastic elements of these movies, like completely unrealistic. I think you and I have it right. Like that's one scene that just feels, when you look at it, it feels like super authentic.
Absolutely.
Super authentic.
You watch that scene, you're like, that is a spy.
It is. You don't know it yet.
Yeah.
It's so clever because like when you first watch it, it just looks totally natural. But then when you go and watch it again after paying attention to Joe's nose twitching about it, it's completely different. And it would feel like that's tradecraft that works in 56. That's tradecraft that works in 2019.
Oh, forever.
It's evergreen tradecraft.
Yeah.
Good call. Here's my number one.
Yeah.
No, we talked about this, but my number one, I think, is when Gibson brings in the British police to Lawrence's apartment.
Oh yeah, and tries to get the information without revealing who he was.
I think I love that. Even though, like, I'm doing some extrapolation of the plot, I'm doing a little guesswork. I'm doing a little, like, filling in the dots on my own of what's going on. But again, there's no reason for the British police to be involved in that. It just, the only way that makes sense is that Gibson talked the British police into going to the Lawrences. He's trying to get the information without having to break cover. That's tradecraft. That's my number one.
I think that that's a great choice. That was a definitely solid moment.
How about you, buddy?
All right, my number one is our boy, the blonde butler.
I love it.
He never
He was on my list.
intervened.
He was
Never-
strongly in
never-
consideration for me too.
He never, ever intervened. All he was a butler. And he would just pass information. We're not even told. The audience watching this movie is never told who this guy is. We just get these random weird shots of him. We had to figure it out on our own.
We had to figure it out on our own, but it fucking makes sense, right?
It all makes sense, and he never intervenes. All he does is he's a butler. Shows up to work, goes home from work. Anything happens, he just happens to send some information somewhere else. And I really liked how you found that, and it played out really, really well, and it was a great asset for the British intelligence.
Every other spy in this movie makes incredibly obvious, huge, stupid mistakes.
Yes. Yeah.
Blonde Butler is in the background.
Yeah.
You not only have to watch this movie a couple times, you have to watch this movie and be like preparing for a podcast about tradecraft and combing through it with a fine-tooth comb to even notice this motherfucker.
Yeah, it was He's
doing his job. He's doing his job.
Yeah.
He gets 100 spy points.
Yeah, definitely.
200.
200.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, no.
He was absolutely on my list of top. Like, yeah.
When you brought him up to me and I had noticed, I was like, wow, oh yeah. And he doesn't skip a beat. He just shows up to work and then gets the info where it needs to go. And so, yeah, I think that was my favorite.
He doesn't even have a line in this movie, Dave.
Not a single one. Not a single one.
We just noticed that he's noticing things at one point. He shows up in 2 scenes. He's probably got like 40 fucking at most. He's on screen for like less than 40 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how you're a spy.
Yeah, exactly. You're just in the background. Nobody notices you other than that random close-up shot we got. That was great.
What about the worst? Let's go down through the worst. What's your top 3 worst tradecraft?
My number 3 worst tradecraft was probably, and like we gotta cut a little slack here for Jimmy because he's not trained, but somehow he's trained in tripping. But my number 3 was tripping the spy, which ended up killing him, and then they don't get any information. They get 0 information. All they did was stop the bad guys, but now they have no information. The prime minister or the ambassador presumably gets away with murder or attempted murder.
My number 3 is in 1934 with Louis not knowing that he's in danger. Like he's
just partying it up.
He's seen Abbott.
Yeah.
He's recognized, like, Abbott and Louis have a moment of co-recognition. A good spy would know that, like, now remember, he's already said, like, I'm leaving tomorrow.
Right.
And that's cool. You're leaving tomorrow. You want to like not break protocol and not like do like weird shit, like sneak out of Switzerland in the middle of the night because that looks suspicious.
Right.
But you don't go to the dance.
Right. Exactly.
There's no reason. Like you, at this point, I really think Louis Bernard should know that he's in danger. But he's just like tra-la-lying, like dancing with another man's wife, like hoo 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 until I'm tangled in string, and oh my god, I'm shot and I'm dead.
He could have faked that he was hurt from that spill when he was going down. That maybe it caught up to him, and he was in feeling like he needed a little bit of rest or something from that big ski competition. He could have made up all kinds of stuff.
He's pretty chill about being shot in the heart too, by the way.
Yeah.
Like I there's a mismatch between where he gets wounded and how much time he gets to impart information in that one.
Yeah.
Because that is definitely a hard shot.
Yeah.
Number 2 for you.
My number 2 was
worst.
Ryan at the second worst is Ryan at the concert in the 1956 walking up to Joe McKenna and saying, "You have a lovely boy," before he even completed the assassination. Or even doing it, period. Why would he go on and let someone else know who he already knows is following this trail trying to get her son, to let her know, hey, by the way, I'm here. We have your boy, and something's going to happen. So just letting you know that we're here. And
it's dumb. It's dumb as fuck.
Yeah, super dumb. And my real number 2 was the 1934 assassin heading immediately to the hideout right after being seen. He went right where they had the hostage, where they had their whole operation, right after he just shot a public official. He needs to go to another place, another safe space where there's no one else out, wait out till things kind of calm down, or till he can get out and get his money and leave the country or something. But what does he do? He goes straight to the hideout where the entire operation is taking place. All of the bad guy spies are present, and the hostage is there.
Motherfucker, get on a bus. Like,
yeah, go somewhere else. Yeah,
get your payment a month later or something. Don't like connect everything.
Yeah.
I think it's a good time to mention this too. Like, so this whole hired assassin idea, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't jive for me. I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think that professional hitmen can be hired for money, for pure money, like it as it appears that Ryan and Ramon are in the 2 movies, can be hired to try to take out heads of state in incredibly highly visible public spaces like the concert.
Right.
That, I mean, maybe I should have put that in one of my worst tradecraft, like, you know, against the movie.
Right.
I think like when an important head of state is assassinated in a public space, it does happen. But you know what? It's not a hired hitman. It's not like Hitman from the fucking video game Hitman, where it's just like, or a comic book where it's just like, yes, you know, transfer $2 million into my account.
Yeah.
You know, and I guarantee, you know, they'll be killed. It's accomplished by like people that are super passionate about politics.
Right. What they'll do is they'll groom someone who's really angry about something and convince them that this target is who you want to hit.
Right. Like just people that are like, fuck it, I cannot take this shit anymore.
Yeah. Or they have nothing to lose.
Right. Yeah. That too.
Yeah.
But the world of hired hitmen is really like so small ball in real life. Like real, like hired hitmen, like they do like, I mean, they shoot like someone, you know, so you can get a life insurance policy and, you know, you pay them like like $5,000 or something. They don't do this elaborate like concert symbol bullshit, and
Yeah.
like like the chances of you getting out there, they're not good.
No, no. You want somebody that's got nothing to lose, that's really angry, and you convince them that getting this person is going to make things better. And why not? You got nothing left. Just take the shot and make the world better for everybody else, or something like that.
Yeah, and you do it while they're in a car, like on the public street or something, somewhere unexpected. It's just
yeah.
there's only so many exits out of the theater.
Yeah.
Do that shit out on the street where you have like 1,000 ways to get away.
Right.
All right, my number one.
Yeah.
It's for both movies. This is an indictment of the movie, not character actions. Kidnapping, well, I guess it is character actions. It's the evil character actions. Kidnapping a kid. I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one. Kidnapping a kid instead of just shooting the fucking people.
Yeah.
You've already demonstrated that you can put a bullet in someone.
Right.
To shut them up. You were cool with shooting
Louis Bernard,
who presumably have people that are paying attention to what is happening with him.
Right.
What's wrong with just the McKenna's like just getting some cement shoes or something?
Right, exactly.
Like a little mugging goes wrong, a little like burglary goes wrong at the Lawrences, and they're both dead. Like the kid kidnapping, that's my biggest minus spy points. I realize it's the whole point of both movies, so you can't remove it, but it's garbage, and clearly it doesn't work out for the villains at all.
No, not whatsoever.
It's an annoying piece of like the last thing you want. You're running a fucking an operation in enemy territory. You're dealing with intrigue. You're watching people. They're watching you. You want a fucking kid? You want to also have the extra job of like having a kid around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to cry and scream and kick and yeah.
That's my number one worst.
I think that's a good call. Yeah. We could have just ended this movie. They could have just shot the people that had the information and the movie's over. Credits roll.
But then we wouldn't have a movie. But we would have a spy story.
Yeah.
All right. So let's redact this. How hard do we need to redact the 1934 version, do you think?
Well, I think a lot of the events are realistic and the scenarios probably have happened other than the kidnapping, because it, like you pointed out, probably worst move the spies could make. If they're just trying to like if they're trying to kidnap someone for another reason, that'd be one thing, but they're just trying to keep information from getting out. So other than that, a lot of these scenarios are pretty realistic, even though they're all fictional events. I think a lot of the elements are pretty realistic. So I don't think we should give it a 5 redaction, because we're saving that for a special movie. But we definitely shouldn't give it 1, because it's definitely not super realistic and it's not really about an event. But a lot of the elements are pretty realistic. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm probably gonna go with a 3 on this one. Maybe a 2.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's a. Well, I mean, we need to redact it highly. No, we need to redact it more highly than 2.5.
Okay.
Because I mean, the everyman being drawn into the land of foreign intrigue, like that just doesn't happen.
No, that's true. Yeah.
The kidnapping is bullshit, but the 1934, I'll absolutely give it to the movie that like this same shit was happening. This same plot was afoot.
Absolutely.
So let's put this one at like a 5. We're gonna have to reserve for like shit like Austin Powers, and honestly, like I've been thinking about this, by the way. I think we could go, like, we could do this podcast for, like, the next 5 years before we even think about even doing Austin Powers. Because there's not going to be any tradecraft to talk about, right?
No, not at all. Just gadgets.
It's
We're
just
gonna have
fucking
gadgets.
fart jokes and
Yeah.
bullshit.
Well, he makes contacts with
Okay.
other guys.
I just haven't watched those movies in so long. But we have to
We
reserve
get some
5
gadgets,
as
I
being,
guess.
like, super unrealistic. Or Spy Kids, which we haven't watched yet, but we are planning on, by the way, audience.
We are planning on doing Spy Kids.
We are going to do Spy Kids. Might get a 5. Yeah. What would, I'm sorry. What was your reaction on it?
I would say 3, maybe a 2.5, but I think I'm leaning more towards 3 because the everyman being swallowed up into this type of situation is not really plausible.
How do you feel?
There's a lot of realistic elements, so I think a 3 would be good.
How do you feel about 3.5?
3.5 is pretty good. Yeah, no, I think, okay. I mean, this isn't a real event. I was more basing it off of a lot of the elements are somewhat realistic.
Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna meet you at 3 again because the same this shit actually did happen. Yeah, even though the elements, the way the movie plays out,
mm-hmm.
are not realistic, there is some tradecraft in there, and also the underlying plot was proven by history to be completely plausible. So yeah, let's call that a solid 3. How about 1956?
1956, I'm probably going to go with the same. Other than there's a lot of elements that are more better executed. Like we have our Louis Bernard gaining information from Ben, and then we have our blonde butler moments. These 2 moments are really solid.
You think those counteract the floppy plot?
Yeah.
All right, I'll hit you with that. Let's call that good.
But maybe if because of the floppy plot, we could give it a 3.5. It's just I definitely wanted to discuss how well Louis Bernard's character pulled off.
No. I'm gonna meet you at 3, and you gave the exact right reasons to bring me down to 3, which are the bus scene and the blonde butler.
Yeah.
Because those are legit.
Yeah, super legit.
Okay, man. Now I've got some things to talk about here, and you jump in anywhere you want.
Okay.
But I got a bit of a rant here and talk about like 1930, the Man Who Knew Too Much, how it works in cinematic history.
Okay.
Like or actually, let me bring you in on this. Is this a spy movie or not, Dave?
I think the first half of both of these movies are a spy movie, but then they turn out to just be a thriller.
Right.
Spy elements to it, but I don't think I would say either of these are a solid spy film.
All the spying is being done or has been done before the movie starts.
Right. And we don't have to see any of it. It's just kind of like there's a lot of interesting spy stuff that's been going on in the background that we don't get to witness.
We don't get to witness. We just get little teases of.
Right.
So, more informed and educated film historians, much more informed and educated than you and me, have called the 39 Steps, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and North by Northwest, which, by the way, spans a significant amount of years. That's between 34 and 59.
Oh, wow.
The original spy movies. Even though they're kind of not spy movies. So I think we're going to call them the prototype spy movies. They are films about international intrigue.
Right.
Spying is kind of the, I don't know, the reason the story happens, but it's not really like spying isn't really what the story's about.
Right, right.
Again,
Well,
like I said before, I think I nailed it when I said like this is a in both cases this is a spy story that this movie there's a spy story going on and this movie comes along and crashes into it
yeah, yeah.
and takes over.
Yeah, these stories are about parents who try and get their kid back.
I mean, like most of the movie, it's like I've never seen Ransom, but give me back my kid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this movie really is. Both
Yeah.
of these movies really are. It just happens to be that the spies are like setting them up. But I still thought it was like really important and fun for us to start our podcast series with this movie, which is part and parcel of the proto-spy genre.
Right.
Why do you think? Do you want to take a little spin on why we think like maybe like it takes us 28 years to for filmmakers to accept the idea that maybe we as an audience want to watch a spy?
Well, I mean, like this goes back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast. That I don't know about how England's population felt about intelligence, but I do know America was not very sympathetic to the idea of intelligence. And so like my theory is that these might have been made to help sway public opinion. I don't know how the public felt in England in 1934, but I definitely know in 1956 the idea of an intelligence agency was like looked down upon in America because the big motto, the big motto was a gentleman never looks at another man's mail, and our intelligence agencies or our intelligence gathering period was only active during wartime. And the CIA wasn't established until what was it 47? I think it was 47. So 1956, the CIA wasn't like out in the open, people talking about it like left and right. So the idea wouldn't have been popular. So
No, CIA would be the parallel, but people, the filmmakers at the time, they weren't copped onto the CIA. They
no,
probably
and
didn't
if
really
they
know
weren't,
the CIA was out there.
and if they did, they probably knew the public didn't, and the public wasn't going to know what anybody was talking about.
Right. So it made more sense. Of course, like, mentioning the French Second Bureau or whatever, like that also like just went way over my head.
Yeah.
Like like I was like Ben in that moment. I was like, I don't know, you're speaking French to me. What the fuck?
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's my thought is that the public really wasn't excited about the idea of a central or long-standing intelligence during peacetime. I mean, again, I don't know how they felt in England, but I would presume it might have been similar, considering that the movie was like we didn't get a spy hero. Like at that time in movies, spies were like the creepy guy. They were like the bad guys. It wasn't. It was you never really.
Yeah,
Had like
we don't spy.
yeah. Yeah, the spies are the other guys. Those are the bad guys.
Right.
We're the good guys. We're the noble people that don't spy.
Yeah. So I actually have a lot of notes about like trying to trace down the very first spy in cinema, and also I'm curious because even when we get James Bond, notice like we're still in 62. We're still not ready to embrace an American spy.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was British.
Right.
So
But you know what? I think we're going to save that for another episode. I think that should be the intro of our James Bond episode, which isn't going to be for a while, but it's going to be in our it's in our lineup.
okay.
But we got other things to talk about, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at spies_like_us. Visit us on our website at www.spieslikeus.net.
find out about upcoming episodes. Also, what'll really help us out is if you give us a review on wherever you found our podcast, either on iTunes or your Android app or YouTube or wherever you listen to us. Even if you didn't like the show, just give us a review. It'll help us, give us feedback so we can make the show better. And it can also help other people who haven't found the show yet find out about us. Hey, Moira, initiate Protocol 9.
Protocol 9 initiated. This podcast will self-destruct in 20 seconds. The preceding transmission sampled the songs Ice Cold by Audionautics, Enter the Party by Kevin MacLeod, and sound effects from freesound.org. Attributions and links are found at spieslikeus.net. Editing by Todd Hostetler.